Let's begin. Good afternoon. Hopefully this brighter, sunnier day will bring some good luck this week. Yeah. Almost towards the end of the course we're leading to. Today and this week is quite relaxing. Last couple of classes were quite hectic, I understand. We won't have much homeworks for today and next class. So after literature review, as we know, the structure that we see in paper, we have method section, which is scheduled for next class, Wednesday. In between literature review and method section, what today's class will focus on, how to evaluate a published article, which is also part of academic writing, but not a part of your existing paper. I mean, we also write critical reviews in journals. We also write book reviews that we publish in journals. So not always academic writing means a research paper. For instance, your assignment that you do for other professors maybe during your courses, that's also an academic writing. So for those kind of purposes, the syllabus includes what today's topic is, how we evaluate a book, or we also call it reflective essay or analytical essay, when you're given a paper and you reflect your thoughts on that paper. Could be a book even. You're given a book and you reflect your thoughts on that book. Now, how we do that academically, it's almost in a way a part of literature review that we did, because we analyze sources. So I keep this topic just after literature review so that it's easier to talk about synthesizing sources that we just have did in the last couple of classes. So today's topic is not in that structure of your research paper. The paper, after literature review, we go to method section, and the method class is on Wednesday, the next class. Today, we'll talk about the language and how we write a critique if we have to publish a criticism on a particular book, or multiple books, or multiple papers could be. So the basic structure, we know that we sum up what we read if we evaluate an article or a paper or a book. So we sum it up, what was written in that book. That's the basic structure we know. And we definitely evaluate. So these are the two basic words we understand. Now, I'll dissect more what are the features and characteristics between these two very generalized words. Our focus is article reviews, but when we say evaluation or review, film review is also a review, book review, but mostly in academic sphere, we need article reviews. And this is the basic structure. By critical assessment, we mean the first introduction should address the intellectual plot line. So now, by intellectual plot line, what do we understand? The first question, anyone who'd like to read it out loud? Go ahead.
What do the researchers want to find out?
So when you are responding after reading an article or a book, the first thing that you should address as a reviewer is this question. That will be your introduction. And the question is, what do the researchers or researcher, singular or plural, want to find out that you are addressing in your introduction? The next question?
It should be mentioned clearly in the introduction, because some researchers just are putting like a background.
It's the reviewer's introduction, not the researcher's introduction. Let's say you are criticizing my paper. Now, you will start with what I wanted to find out.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? The next question? Someone else would like to? Yeah, please.
Why is that important to investigate customers?
Yeah, so first of all, this is not enough. What I want to investigate. Why is very important. What's the context? What's the usefulness, effectiveness? Is it necessary, unnecessary? Why am I investigating something? So what's the purpose of that investigation or that research? So this is very important. These two things are called intellectual plotline. That will be included in the reviewer's or the critique's introduction. Confusion? Question? So whenever we are criticizing or we are asked to reflect on a paper, what do you think about this paper? We will start with the intellectual plotline. And it happens mostly in most of the grad courses, classes. You read multiple papers and you're asked to reflect on something, so that you'll start with this. The next point is summary. Now, what do we mean by summarization? Organization of the resource. You're not only summarizing key points summary is a very vague and general word. So let's dissect it point by point and step by step. So what do we mean by actually summarizing the book or the paper that you read? Organization, which means you'll start with the beginning, literature review method, results, discussion, how the paper is organized, the paper that you read, or the book, how it is organized. So whenever you look at the organization of the article, you'll first find, after introduction, that you have already talked about here. So we'll not talk about the context anymore as a reviewer. You're now talking about the existing or the background, the previous research that researcher included in his or her research paper. So the way we did, how he synthesized his or her matrix, her literature review, and then how the methods, how the results are presented, or is it at all mentioned or not, the method section, the discussion section, the argument section. So this organization is clear, understandable, comprehensible, convincing or not. We'll look into languages and samples. So that's what we mean by summary. We do not only summarize what was the topic. We summarize the whole organization. We do not miss. If you summarize only the literature review section and you miss the method section, then it would be an incomplete summary as a reviewer. Make sense? We do not miss any section when we criticize an article or a book. All good? As a reviewer, you touch all these structures. The next is evaluation. So now there will be a little language play. We'll get into that. Before that, let's read it out. The first question, someone else would like to read it out loud? Anyone can volunteer.
Do the authors present a convincing level of argument here, or does it appear that they are just name-dropping?
Okay, so these are the questions we ask ourselves as a reviewer at the back of our mind. Now, my question is, we all know what is name dropping? Are we all used to this term, name dropping? Name dropping is a phrase. It means when we use big names, but we do not properly logically connect it. We just throw it because we know it, but we do not understand it. So it's that's what name dropping phrase means. So that's one point. So the author or the authors are presenting a convincing line of argument. So the cohesion and coherence are properly managed or maintained or not. The flow and everything. So now you're evaluating the way we learned in our earlier classes, the moves, whether the rhetorical moves or the steps or the moves in the background, in the gap, and how you're occupying the niche and whatever is missing. When we learn method section in the next class, we'll also learn what moves are also expected in the methods. The next question, someone else who would like to read it out loud? Go ahead. Go ahead, anyone, yeah?
The authors present here concise and accurate summary of the major findings.
Cool, nice. So we can evaluate the findings, not one by one. Maybe there are several graphs. Maybe the authors have summarized their findings and you are commenting on, is it enough or not? Is it adequate or not? Or more would be needed or not? So you're evaluating the findings. That's a part of evaluation. The third part. The third question, the next question. Someone else? Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
Do the authors thoughtfully address the limitations of their study?
Yeah, so we got basic 3 things, but I do not mean only 3. There could be 5, 10. You have more suggestions, corrections, recommendations, could be. But the basic 3 is first, flow or the line of argument. Secondly, the findings are enough or not, or proper or not. The third evaluation is the limitations are mentioned or addressed or not. If you find these 3 things, so that means it's a fair review, at least fair, not a partial one, not something is overlooked. We can say that's a fair review if we find at least these 3 topics. Now let's have a look at a few examples. If I take it, the last sentence we cannot read because of this. Yeah. Who would like to read the first example? Jeff, go ahead.
Early papers fail to use cross-section distributions of accidents counts to distinguish between true or spurious state dependence.
So let's say we see an evaluation language, right? In the next example, someone else would like to read it out loud? I repeated maybe something here. Yeah, so you can read it once.
This flawed but ambitious study, the authors attempt to show that
It would be actually in this. I got my mistake now,
in
yes.
this flawed but
Yeah.
ambitious study, the authors attempt to show that domesticated animals are in some way just as responsible as
Automobiles,
for our current CO2 imbalance.
carbon dioxide imbalance. So here we see kind of a neutral. It's saying flawed, but also saying ambitious. So we call it reverse adjectives or parallel adjectives, positive and negative, simultaneously in the same place. But also we can directly say fail to use. That's also evaluation language. Another evaluation language. Someone else would like to read this one? Anyone? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the author suggests that the journal articles written in languages other than English may have limited impact. However, he fails to recognize that they may be important at the original level.
Yeah, so we see a linker and then we see the evaluation language. So there could be various ways to present my voice as a reviewer and the author's voice that you're summarizing and commenting. So there's a difference. This sentence, it's not your voice. It's the author suggests something. Your comment is this. So this voice should be very clear for your audience, which is critique's voice and which is the author's voice. Even in your synthesis metrics, when you are citing your sources. Response. Response is very, now these are overlapped. I won't say in evaluation we are not responding. We are responding. But when the part 4 of a critique, response means when I'm adding either future recommendation a scope of that research, or I'm suggesting something. So that's, which is not there, which is not in the paper, which is not in that book. When that's your response to it. You could provide, let's say, usually it's for, I would say, editors. Let's say I wrote a paper and I submitted to a journal. Now, editors do not only evaluate, but also suggest, if it's your supervisor, could suggest you 2 more books to read and then edit your own paper. Or 1 more paper to read, and then you come back and write it again. So your response might have recommendations. Got it? When you are responding, you write recommendations of what you have read, if you are the response writer. So let's say, and we use conditionals when we are writing a critique in this language. The first one, would like to read it out loud. Someone who haven't. Yeah.
The damage assessment would have been more accurate if it had been done immediately after the earthquake.
So there's a suggestion we can see, and we cannot change it. That's why we see, we'll talk about the grammar structure.
So we can include hedging in order to be more safe in our conditions.
Yes, definitely. We have already seen hedging or boosting. When we say you fail to use, that's boosting. If we say this is hedging, would be more accurate, or might, we can use might be more accurate. That would be, yeah. The next example. Someone else? Anyone? Please go ahead. Yeah. So the resolution might have changed if the substation joule heating had occurred. Now, the thing is, today we will learn a few more examples and exercises on evaluation language. So whatever passage we'll read, we'll try to find out which languages are evaluative language. And also we need to know this conditional structure. We might have learned earlier in our language learning days what is conditional. We all know what is conditional. So I have a question. What's the difference between, I wish I had I don't have marker. This is would have and verb past participle form. Correct? And this is past perfect. Right? Same here. Might have participle form. Had V3 past perfect. Right? So now my question is, let's say the damage assessment would change, would be more accurate if I say, not would have been, would be more accurate if it was done immediately. I'm using past simple now, not it had been done. I repeat, the damage assessment would be more accurate if it was done. Any confusion? What I said clear? Was the mistake in that? Why cannot I do it? Or why? Or is it possible to do both? Should I repeat again?
Yeah.
So there are two conditionals. Both are called unreal conditionals because something that is done. So we cannot change it. It's not like, if it doesn't rain, I'll come to the class. That's not unreal conditional. That's called real conditional. So we are not talking about real conditionals. Because that is possible to do. We're talking about unreal conditionals, which is not possible to change. Make sense? Okay. So in both cases, there are two options. Would be more accurate or would have been more accurate. Both are correct. But in this case, which one we should accept and not, that's the discussion I want to have. The damage assessment would be more accurate if it was done. So I just change it to past perfect to past simple. And that's how it goes. If you use would and not have been, then you use past simple, by the way.
So
See?
the first one was would be.
If you write would be more accurate, then you cannot use had been.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying if I change this, I have to change this. It goes like that. Understand?
So the meaning is the same.
The meaning is same, but it's. So what's your point of view on that?
I mean,
Do you find any difference?
yeah, meaning difference.
Meaning difference?
Yes.
Oh, please share. That's what I'm asking.
I my question.
Oh, that's a question.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that. Anyone has any observation? So what I said, the damage assessment would have been more accurate, or the damage assessment would be more accurate. So if I turn it to would be, it would be present simple, the next one. If it was done, then it would be. Now the question is whether it is would have been or would be. So what's the difference in meaning?
Yeah, I guess would have been it's something in the past, and we are not trying to change the past, just plain. And if you change it to present, it would be something that regular to do. Yeah, this is
Then the next logic, come again? I couldn't hear it. If it's present?
So it's in the past.
Mhm.
So something has done in the past, and
Correct, yeah.
thinking about the past. If I had the chance to go back, I would do this. The thing.
Very good point. So the difference is when your editor, let's say you're writing a critique and you wrote would have been more accurate, that means that action cannot be changed at all. Then you use this when something is totally unchangeable. But there is a scope to edit, then we use would be, if there is a scope to edit.
So if I review a paper and write would have been,
That means there is no scope to edit, change this. It is done now.
Yeah, so the writer will not.
The writer cannot now write would be more accurate. Would be more accurate you can write only when the writer can change it. Then you write, the reviewer can write, would be more accurate if you do this. Then that means you have the research writer has the scope to change it. Has the scope to experiment and change it, or still have that option. You have that option still. But if you write would have been, that means it is now done. So this critique is actually locked then. It is not changeable.
So in the response section would be the appropriate tense would be the would have been always.
If it's unchangeable.
Most of the cases.
Most of the cases, yes, but sometimes, let's say if I'm giving you feedback, you are changing it. In that case, no. Yeah. Even sometimes, even when you're not even in my case, you're submitting your paper, your supervisor or editor gave you a correction, you change it and then again submit it. Now, if it's published, after that, you are writing a review of a published article. That means the writer cannot change it. Then definitely you use this format. Make sense? But if it's not published, that means there's a chance to change it. Got it now? Yeah? A few more examples. The paper, mostly we will see would have been because that's what we see. Mostly we will read published articles. So I'm only putting examples of would have been plus had used. So the paper would have been somewhat more relevant if the authors had used a better measure. So this is the structure. if conditionals. The article would have been more persuasive if the author had related. So past perfect. Would have been and past perfect. Again, the data, this is the different one. Would be clearer if the authors gave their main findings in the form of a table. Now have a look at this third example. Here we have would be and only past simple, not past perfect. Because this form you can change. The table, you can change it. The reviewer wrote this, that means the writer has the scope to change it. That's what we understand between these two grammatical forms. All good? Cool. Now let's practice page 233. Let me take it to our usual. Unit 6 is writing critiques. Task 4 is our first passage that we will read. Page 245 in that box, if you type page 245, it will directly take you to this page. Now, our task is, we'll read this passage, the critical assessment of research, traditional and new methods of evaluation. After reading this passage, it has 20 sentences. We will just answer, and in groups, definitely.
Oh, cool.
Question number 3 and 6. 3 is the structure of it, and there is a name we can see, Notre scheme. We all could see it? Yeah? So what is Notre scheme? If you do not know, no worries. If you go back to this page, just 2 pages earlier, Notre scheme is the way critiques write book reviews. So there is one particular theory of Notre scheme, that is this. First you mention the general aim, then you introduce the book with this language, and then you outline it. So that's how you structure it. So there are 5 breakdown of paragraphs, how you highlight it and how you provide your final comment and recommendations. That's for book reviews. The next passage we will read will be about a journal article. So I have picked up 2 examples. This is a book review. All good? So we'll just try to find out whether this passage has followed, this book review has followed this scheme or not. If it has followed this scheme, try to find out which paragraph is outlining the book, which paragraph is highlighting parts of the book, which paragraph or sentence is recommendation. All good? And tense, where you see shift of tenses, present and past. Question number 3 and 6. Confusion? Question 6 is about tense. Let's start. And then discuss in groups. If you're done reading the passage, then you can find Motorot's scheme together in the group.
Yeah, this is more like
First one should be introduction, right? The second one should be what?
so I think this is like here it's oh, this is a highlight, it's a comment. say no, I think so.
Even there's number 4, there's a page.
What? That's a school, right?
Present simple, future.
We can put it like this.
Yeah. So
Could you guess when do we use, why we use that tense?
I think it depends on the context
Mm.
that is followed.
Right. Good.
But I think as a researcher, I can use anything that I want in my
Yeah, it's like,
Depends on the context.
context of
Yeah, I mean, mostly we don't have to use present tense, but
yeah.
only in certain circumstances we see shapes.
Yeah, but a lot of words using word a lot.
Good.
What
Oh yes, we'll talk about it. In how many instances you have seen wood? Like the many, or you can mark the sentences if you want. Yeah. Done? We can get back to this. Maybe in 2 times. Wait, no. I guess so. Okay, let's participate in the discussion. So first, I'll ask your observation. You find the motor rod scheme, the way the book was introduced, and then certain parts were highlighted and all that. Any confusion or question on that? On the structure? Do you have any observation to share? Or it followed the scheme like a book, huh?
I think there was some lines that were like, I don't know, if the scheme was like you present the introduction and you do all of this. There was one line.
Let me have a look at this part here. Sure, go ahead.
I mean, there was this line like in, I think the second paragraph or third paragraph that said like, and this is also for students instead of being.
The first paragraph ends with this sentence. Target audience for the book is students. That's what you mean?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the first paragraph.
Yeah.
But in the first paragraph, we were identifying like every sentence, we were connecting it with and all of this.
With the scheme.
The scheme.
So
Yeah.
you think that sentence number 5 was not part of the.
Well, like I thought that it was gonna add to end of that paragraph with that sentence.
Sure, yeah, makes
But
sense.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's an observation, nice observation. Thank you. Anyone else who has certain observations like that? No, that's a valid point. Yeah, to end the paragraph on that note seems a little inconclusive. I mean, the cohesion
Yeah.
loses somewhere. Yeah.
That's why this is like commenting about, right? So maybe it's a different.
No, that's a very valid point. Yeah. Anyone else? Any observation on the scheme and whether that is followed or wherever it wasn't followed? You find it totally? What about the next group? I mean, Carol, Jeff, and Mohammed. You all found all good with the scheme? So no new observations? Other groups? Let's talk about tense. So which tense we find most here? present simple tense, but we see shift of tense in two cases. First, sentence number. Anyone?
Number 4.
Hmm?
Number 4. Future.
Good. Very good. Because it's talking about a prospect. Makes sense. So actually the sentence starts with present simple, but then shifted to prospect. Yeah. Next, shift. Which sentence number you think? We got another shift from present tense.
The last one in the paragraph, I think,
Hmm?
which is 11.
11. 11 is present simple.
Yeah, okay.
What about 16? Actually 16 and 17 I thought to discuss. Would lead. So again, when we say would lead, it's also it's a reference to future, to broader debates. Something would lead to broader debates, right? Sentence 16. 17. This is the only sentence we saw past simple, right? Because of the conditional. If, where, and if we use past simple here, then we have to use would be, the conditional that we just have seen an example. But this is actually not a criticism. It says if any criticism were to be leveled. But the next sentence is a good criticism. Right? Sentence 18. That's the only point this is the paragraph we see the criticism. I have a question. Where do we see, in which sentence we see the usefulness of the book? The reviewer wrote the usefulness of the book in which sentence? Sentence number? One said 12. Who said?
No.
You said 21. 20. You said 20. 12, 20, 20. Anyone else? What's in sentence?
Like 19.
You said 19. Hmm?
Or 18.
18 is a gap, right?
19.
It's talking about something is more attention is not paid to the research output. So it's mentioning,
19.
yeah. So we have 19 and 20 acceptable as this question that I asked, usefulness of the book. Now, sentence 19 directly says why this book is useful for readers. If you have to pick one sentence, this book arms its readers with this questions, the way we assess a research paper or research sources, the way we value by print and broadcast media. Don't we? And it's in a continuation, it ended with this, what we learn, how economic, social, political. So sentence 20 is also part of it. We cannot omit sentence 20. 20 and 19, I would say, together they mention the usefulness of the book. Cool. So it was an easy read. Now let's read a paper. Page 245 in the book. And here it would be task 9. So page 257, if you just type in the box, this will appear. Here we only will look into question number 3, not the other questions. which is evaluative language, hedging and boosting. We'll just underline the hedging and boosting phrases. Question number 3 here. Underline the evaluative language, which is hedging and boosting. Where do you think evaluative language has been used? Do you notice any instances of hedging or boosting? Because through hedging and boosting, we reviewers or critique, we posit our position, that which side we are taking of that particular opinion. We provide our opinion through hedging and boosting. So let's read it out. And we'll discuss in groups. Do it together, by the way. Do it together, yeah, in groups. I mean, if it's, they can join you, yeah. Okay. Ask me questions. I commented in the same per user file. Because there are so many line by line going through each will be difficult.
She never uses hatching WordPress.
Very less.
Less items in.
Oh, I mean, yes, boosting is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very decisive in his It's
Very
very decisive and
decisive and biased, so generalized. Yeah, makes sense.
which is not a good way to
Very good, very good.
make content papers.
Correct. True, I agree. Agree. Also, another observation I have, sometimes you might fail to differentiate which is the reviewer's voice and which is the author's voice. For example, just that's a very significant point. For instance, let's say, who wrote this? Fall short. Who wrote this? Cool. Yeah. Thank you. So what I want to say is, now this is actually that's the problem with this kind of style of writing. We are here, right? Sentence 15. Yeah. So now this fall short phrase here, if you read the sentence, it's actually neither hedging nor boosting. It's actually nothing. Because it's not a comment, it's a quote. So what the paper or the resource writer, the source writer, what repeatedly did, it's just said that. It's not the reviewer's comment that something falls short. It's not the reviewer's opinion. This falls short. But in the next, this is reviewers, yes. Got it? So sometimes we have to be very vocal and clear, which is my voice and which is, are we making it very evident or not? And that happens when you submit your synthesis matrix. It will happen to all of us possibly, that which is actually I'm saying and which is my reference, it gets mixed up sometimes. So, but we have to be very careful about it. That's why we do this kind of talk, so that we understand we should not write like this. Make sense? Huh? We are almost done with time. So I will suggest you this page. This is also in the module section. If you click in each point, let's say you want to highlight inadequacies, then in academic sphere, what languages we use, you'll see varieties of styles, so that you do not repeat one style in multiple paragraphs even. So let's say inadequacy can be said in this way, also in this way, also in that way. So there are various examples. That's one point, only when you're talking about inadequacy. Or if you want to talk about a weakness in a single paper, then again, the kind of styles of languages, it's a phrase bank called, this site is called Phrase Bank, University of Manchester's site. It's also in the module section. If you see, could you all access that? Yeah, you'd see in the title Phrase Bank in further reading section. In today's week, and also, I mean, anyone if you click introducing general criticism or problems and limitations for method and or practice. Let's say you want to criticize the method. So this is a few samples or all the possible list of examples how the language could be. So I hope that would help when you'll be writing your own literature review and synthesizing your sources. All good? We can back up today. Thank you.